and I will invite people to speak at the appropriate time. The raise your hand icon should also be used to assent when voting is required. And I just ask you all to be a bit patient with the use of this technology. And I'll apologise in advance if we experience any unforeseen difficulties, which we shall try to resolve, or we'll get Lisa to resolve it. Right, we'll move on to the start of the meeting. Any apologies for absent, Lisa?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Westwood.
And the report the appointment of substitutes.
Councillor Challoner for Councillor Westwood, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone got any declarations of interest under the members' code?
No.
None indicated. We need to confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of February as a correct record. Don't quite know how I'm going to sign them at this long distance, but we'll sort that out. Any comments on the minutes?
No.
I would just comment that we did have written answers to all the questions that I put to Matt Boucher. He gave quite good full explanations, I feel, at that from the last meeting. I would just ask, probably Lisa, do you know if the licensing and taxes gave any consideration to what we asked them to?
I did chase this with them, Chair, and Simon was off in taxes, but Tidy sent an email to Kath Knowles, and Kath sent an email back saying that she was trying to pull together a Teams meeting to discuss alternative training. So bear with her while she was setting this up, but obviously I'm not sure what's happening now, but I can chase this back up with the licensing department.
Yeah, I think we could do with being informed of it at some future meeting, just to keep our hands on it. The other thing that we didn't get the full answer to was the scrutiny working group. We're going to look at the contract standing orders on social value. Unfortunately, I don't know whether you read it, but we had an email saying that the Director of Commercial and Customer Services is leaving in September. And this item will be processed by the new interim director and hopefully be presented to the scrutiny committees afterwards. That I think we need to have a follow-up on as well, just to make sure it is followed up. Apart from that, is it all right to sign the minutes?
Yes.
No one dissenting, so we'll move on to item 5, which is the committee work plan.
Thank you, Chair. The only things I really want to highlight in the committee work plan, which is attached as Appendix A on page 3 of the agenda, is we've put in an additional meeting in the current year. When we looked at the potential agenda for tonight's meeting, there was so much brought forward from the April meeting that was felt best to split over 2 meetings, the 29th of July and the 12th of August. The other thing I would highlight is that the statement of accounts and the audit work and the annual governance statement are moved into the September meeting. This is a move back compared with the last couple of years, and is caused by the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So there's been an adjustment to the accounts completion timetable. Otherwise, the agenda is very similarly structured to what the committee's used to in previous years.
Good. Any other comments?
Chair, we've got
Gay Partridge.
Gay
Councillor
Partridge raising the hand. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I can't find anywhere else on the agenda to bring this up, so forgive me, but sort of we are looking at the moment at the internal audit plan for 2020-21, which is great. But I did wonder, right, if in the past we have done internal audit plans and if perhaps they were known as another name, because I have sort of been trying to compare where we were last year to where we are this year, and I've been totally unsuccessful in doing that. So any help or comments would be really most welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, we have. Do you want to comment, Graham? Graham, are you on mute or? Because we can't hear anything.
Sorry. Yes, the annual internal audit plan normally gets presented to the April meeting of this committee. I'm not aware that the title of the report has changed. The last report went to the April 19 meeting.
Okay, Gay.
Yeah, Chair, what I would say in my defence was I didn't check April. That was about the only month
Ooh.
that. So sorry for that. Many apologies.
We did have it. Well, we have it every year, so it was there last year. Right. No more comments. So we've just asked to note the comments of the report.
Chair, Councillor Cowell has raised her hand.
Yes, Jackie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It might be me, but the way I'm reading it, the one thing I can't see on this year's plan is the exceptions to standing orders. I don't know if they've been merged in with something else or whether it's just the way I'm reading it. Normally we have two a year, I think.
You want to answer, Mo? Mohammed?
The short answer, Councillor Cowell, is that we changed standing orders a few months ago now, and they were brought to the committee for approval. And as a result of that, Ian can correct me, but we don't have exceptions to standing orders anymore.
I won't correct Mohammed because he isn't wrong. And the way in which the contract standing orders work effectively waivers are dealt with by the Director of Commercial and Customer Services.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, John.
Thank you.
Right, then we'll take the contents of the report and approval of the agenda is taken. We'll move on to item 6, which is the reappointment of the Standard Subcommittee.
Thank you, Chair.
I think, Mo, you want to speak on it?
Yes, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is a annual report that we bring to the committee. It's normally after the elections and after annual council. And what we normally ask you to do is to nominate as a committee the 3 members you would like to be part of the standard subcommittee. And ordinarily it is the chair, the vice chair, whoever they are, and one other councillor, and there's no requirement for political proportionality. What's different on this occasion, and you'll see a paragraph 3 that we're asking for the chair, the vice chair and Councillor Cowell, because that's the current existing makeup of the standard subcommittee. And the reason why we've left it as it is because this year there has been no annual council, and so for all intents and purposes, as per the emergency legislation that we had, you could almost argue that the previous political municipal year is actually continuing. So therefore there's no change to any committee chair or vice chair, or indeed up to now any other change of membership. Although if there is during the year change of membership, then obviously that will be considered. So that's a long way of saying, if you're minded to, can you please approve the membership of the subcommittee as the chair, which is obviously Councillor Taylor this year, the vice chair, Councillor Roberts, and Councillor Jackie Cowell.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else wish to speak before we take the recommendation? No.
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
So we just also recommend that the reappointment of the Standard Subcommittee for 2021 with its existing terms of reference, that is to be confirmed. And as we've heard, the present committee is myself, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Cowell. Everyone in agreement with those recommendations?
Yeah.
We haven't any dissenters, so we take it as read. We therefore go on to item 7, which is the Local Government Association Model Member Code of Conduct.
Thank you, Chair. That's me again.
Yep.
Can I say a few preliminary words before I come on to the actual report and the code of conduct? And yeah. I'm sure most members are familiar with what I'm about to say, but just as a bit of background, we've had, as a local authority, a members code of conduct for many years, in one guise or another. And the one that we've currently got, the one that council approved quite a few years ago, was following the Localism Act, when there was basically a change in the legislation, which said, for example, and we'll come on to that later, but whereas previously members could be suspended or even disqualified, after the Localism Act, that was no longer the case. So all local authorities had a new code of conduct to reflect that. And our code of conduct was actually taken from a template, and it was taken from a template which was from the government and also from the Local Government Association and other national organisations, democratic service organisations and lawyers in local government organisations contributed to that. So we've got a template that we've been using for the last 8 years. It's worked well, and again, you will be familiar, but what we have in place in Dudley, along with the code of conduct, which applies to all members, so you're all subject to its requirements. We also have a procedure for if there is a complaint, and again, you will, most of you will be familiar with that, and it's part of the Constitution, as is the code of conduct, and it's all the various documents, the procedure, the code are contained in the local authorities Constitution. And so, for example, the code was approved by full council around 2012, and one of the requirements is that if anyone wants to make a complaint, whether that's a member of the public or a member against another member, then first of all we have a form which needs to be completed so that every complainant provides the same information. And then once I receive that form, then the standard, again, the procedure says that where necessary I can confirm or discuss the complaint with an independent person. It used to be the Bishop of Dudley, as you know, and then when he moved on, we've appointed another local churchman, if I can call him that. And again, I consult with him periodically. And then depending on my discussions with the independent person and in consultation with the complainant, and where necessary, the member complained against, the matter may or may not be investigated, and if there is a requirement for an investigation, it's an independent investigation, then I consider that. And then depending on the results of the investigation, that may be the end of the matter, or it may go before a standard subcommittee. And that's where the previous item we discussed comes into place, where there's a consideration of the complaint and the investigation report by the standards subcommittee. So that's what we currently have in place. Now, you will recall that back in December, we had the annual report of the Committee on Standards in Public Life, and they told us that there would be an updated model code of conduct from the Local Government Association. Now, I've discussed this with my colleagues and my fellow chief legal officers. I'm not quite sure where this has come from, or actually if there's even a need for this. But and I'm not going to say it's to create some work for the Local Government Association, but they've come up with the code of conduct, and having looked at it, and again, I thought it was just me, but having discussed it with my colleagues in other local authorities, we've had a bit of a job understanding it, and you will have read it and you'll have your own views on it. And if you remember, one of the issues that we were most concerned about was sanctions. And again, they put their hands up to that and said that's a matter for the government. So we can't really talk about sanctions, but they've put in square brackets a reference that if the government could be persuaded to change this sanctions regime, then that may go into the code. So I don't intend to go into too much detail, but if I could ask you please to look at page 3, which is page 11 of the report, if that makes sense. It's headed purpose. And the second chunk of that talks about the application of the code. And you'll see there, I just wanted to bring to your attention the square brackets where it says the code of conduct applies to you when you are acting. So at the moment, it applies to you when you're acting as in your capacity as a member. And that's actually quite a wide definition. But they want to put in if the law can be changed, or claiming or giving the impression that you are acting. Well, that's probably just clarifying something which we've already assumed is part of the code. So if a member was going around giving the impression that they were acting as a member, for example, if they signed something off as councillor, then I would argue that if they turned around and said it wasn't in my capacity as a councillor, I would say, well, you're acting or giving the impression that you were acting as a councillor. So this is just a clarification they put in. And again, further down, they say it applies to you to all forms of communication and interaction, including written, verbal, non-verbal, electronic, and via social media. And then they want to put in, including where you could be deemed to be representing your council, or if there are potential implications for the council's reputation. So that's again a further clarification. They then set out model member conduct. Now, that conduct is something that's just good guidance, and there's no kind of breach of that, but the specific obligations of general conduct that actually, and that goes over to the next couple of pages, that sets out the actual obligations, which if there was a breach of these, then that would give cause for a complaint and an investigation. And if we go over to the next 2 pages, I won't again read all of them, but the first one, which is a new one, is headed civility. Now, treating others, councillors and members of the public with civility, treating council employees and representatives of partner organisations and those volunteering for the council with civility. Now, again, my view is, matter for yourselves, civility may not be easily understood by everyone. And I don't understand, for example, why instead of civility, it doesn't say respect. Because if you change the word and read the first paragraph again, treating other councillors and members of the public with respect, I think that's more easily understandable. The rest you're all familiar with: bullying and harassment. That's already in the code of conduct. Impartiality of officers of the council and not compromising or attempting to compromise officers' impartiality, confidentiality and access to information, bringing your role or the council into disrepute, your position, not taking improper advantage or disadvantage for yourself or anyone else you're close to, use of council resources and facilities, that includes accommodation and IT of various descriptions. And then you're all familiar, and in this local authority, I'm not aware of any issue insofar as registering and declaring interest is concerned. Gifts and hospitality, you're already aware of that. Registering with the monitoring officer, which you all do, any gift or hospitality with an estimated value of at least £25 within 28 days. And then it goes on to set out the consequences of a breach, and you'll see right at the end of that paragraph what I've already discussed under the heading of note. Items in square brackets refer to recommendations made by the Committee on Standards in Public Life and may be part of a future government consultation. This includes possible future sanctions and appeals processes. Now, what I intend to do, and then what you've got in the appendices, you've got the 7 principles, which we're all familiar with, the Nolan principles, famous Nolan principles, all those years ago now, 20 years ago, and then the requirement to register interests, declaring interests, which you're all familiar with, and then the table 1, disclosing pecuniary interest, and again, employment and sponsorship, contracts, land and property license, corporate tenancies, securities. And then at page 22, what you have there in hard copy form is a consultation on this draft model member code of conduct. And the hard copy is for your information because the actual consultation can only be undertaken through the website. They won't accept hard copies, and the deadline is the 17th of August. Now, I intend to respond in my capacity as monitoring officer. I wanted to bring this to your attention first as the audit committee. However, we've still got 3 weeks, and what I was thinking was to send an email out via Democratic Services to all members, just to bring the draft code to their attention and the consultation. And if any member individually wants to respond, that's a matter for them. And again, that opportunity is open to yourselves as well, to directly comment, or can I suggest not now, but if there are any comments you want to, we can have the discussion now, but if there are any comments you want to bring to my attention, then please, I suggest you email me over the next few days, and I can incorporate that into my submission in relation to the draft code. Happy to take any questions.
Right. Mo, just with the gifts and hospitality, is ours £25 or is it 100?
When I was reading that, I thought someone might ask me that question. I thought
I got tied up with it, if you remember. So
I thought it was 100. I'll double check that, Chair. But these days, £25 is a lot of money, but sometimes you can't buy a decent pen for less than that.
I think when I had to check it, I think it did come out the 100.
It's
Chair, through you, it is £100
yeah,
for Dudley.
Right, thank you.
we changed it. I recall we changed it quite a
About
few years. We changed it
About
quite
3
a few
years.
years ago.
Fine. That's all I've got. I've got
Chair, we've got Jackie.
Cowell.
Oh, yeah.
Jackie.
Hang on. Thanks, Chair. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to talk about was the bit under declaring interests under Appendix B on page 17. That completely baffled me because it keeps referring to you can speak only if members of the public are allowed to speak, and I just can't get my head around that. I don't know whether anybody else can make head or tail of it, but I was just totally baffled. If you have to declare an interest, you can only then speak if a member of the public can speak. But obviously, a lot of our meetings,
This is only on certain issues, but you can probably explain it better than me. No.
Yeah, what it says is where a matter arises at a meeting which directly relates to an interest in table 2. So that's the table on page 20.
Yeah.
That's in relation to any body which you're a member of. So it's limited to though exercising functions of a public nature directed to charitable purposes, or one of whose principal purposes includes the influence of public opinion or policy. So that includes political parties, for example. So it's not all your interest. It doesn't stop you from speaking. What it's saying is that if the discussion relates to something which you have an interest in as a member of that body, then you must declare that interest and you may speak on that matter only if members of the public are also allowed to speak at the meeting, but otherwise must not take part in any discussion or vote in the matter and must not remain in the room unless you have been granted a dispensation. If you remember, or you may not, Councillor Cow, but again, before 2012, the rules were very strict. And so, for example, if you were a member of, let's say, an outside body, although you were appointed by the local authority, then simply because of your membership, you couldn't, you'd have to declare an interest and then you couldn't speak on the matter. Now, in most scenarios, members may have to declare an interest, but generally they're able to speak. So, for example, if they're a school governor, they're able to speak. Whereas before 2012, they were prohibited from speaking, which was a complete nonsense. Now, obviously, if you have a prejudicial interest in a matter, let's say it's an application to have a traffic regulation order, double yellow lines outside your house. Now, if that's the case, then you'd have to declare the interest and not contribute to that because it directly affects you.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. It's this bit about the public being able to, you can only speak if the public can speak. I find that very odd. It's that particular aspect I'm a bit confused by. Not the rest. I understand the rest of the general gist of it.
I'm happy to, if you want to, I'm happy to look at it again and have a conversation with you outside of this.
Yeah, I just thought it was a very odd phrase, the way it was phrased. That's the only reason I was drawing attention to it.
Yeah,
I
well,
think
that's
the meeting where it would affect really is the council meeting, isn't it?
Well,
Other
no,
meetings,
public
such
can't
as
speak.
forums, they do speak anyway. But at the council meeting, it would be difficult to get the public speaking on an item.
Yeah, there's no public speaking ordinarily at full council.
So really, a member, taking this to the extreme, a member wouldn't be able to speak on an item of this type at a council meeting because the public aren't allowed to.
I'll have to consider that further, Chair.
That's how I read it anyway about the council meetings. Right, Michael? You're all right, Jackie, before we move off? Yeah.
Yes,
Michael,
thanks, Chair.
Michael, you're on mute.
How's that?
That's better.
Yeah, in principle, I think the code of conduct works exceptionally well. I think my concern, and I think Councillor Aston's concern, is basically the same, that although we can deal with the disciplines if you want to, the lack of power that the committee have is very concerning. And I believe at the last meeting we had, we said that we should actually write to the government to address this issue. What's the update on that?
Well, if you, Councillor Evans, we provided an update, I think a couple of meetings ago. We did write to the government, and the government basically turned around and said, we have no plans to change the legislation. And from memory, they went further and said, insofar as the sanctions are concerned, they don't think it's a major issue.
Can I come back on this, Chair?
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, I think in principle, I think both Councillor Aston and myself agree that I think we should keep under the government until this is addressed, because it's no good taking a meeting when you haven't got the disciplinary powers to address it correctly.
Absolutely, I agree. And that's one of the issues I think that should again be spelled out in the this consultation.
All right. Okay, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Right, Adam?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to echo Councillor Evans' points, really. I think we all know that we all recall one particular case where it was incredibly frustrating. We've discussed this before. It was incredibly frustrating that we couldn't really put any meaningful sanctions on a councillor who'd behaved appallingly. In terms of the actual code of conduct, it's reasonably easy to understand. I'm not 100% convinced there's actually a need for this, and the need is actually, as Councillor Evans said, more of a sanctions issue rather than an actual code of conduct thing. In terms of the term civility, when I read this, I thought exactly the same as Mohammed. So I googled why that word was being used, because there were lots of other words which would be far more appropriate. And apparently, this is part of a whole programme being undertaken by the LGA entitled Civility in Public Life. And there's a whole raft of stuff they've done very recently, since December, entitled Civility in Public Life. But yeah, I agree with Mo. It's not perhaps, it's quite an outdated term, and one a lot of people won't actually understand. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. You want to come back, Michael, because you've still got your hand up. Right, fine. That's better.
Chair, before you proceed, just checking Councillor Partridge had her hand up earlier, just checking she doesn't want to say anything.
Nothing to say, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm upset, Gay.
That concludes it. Then we recommended that the Monitor Officer be authorised to submit a response to the consultation on the LGA Model Member Code of Conduct, taking into account the comments we've made. All agree? No one against. So we will proceed to item 8, which is the Audit Services Annual Performance Report for 1920. Graham?
Right, thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so this report details the performance of audit services for the year ending the 31st of March 2020. Thankfully, most work was completed before the lockdown. Hopefully all councillors have had a chance to read the report because it's quite a detailed report. What I propose to do is just to highlight the key points tonight in my presentation. So, as at the end of March 2020, 96% of the audit plan was completed, which compares to 93% in 2018-19. We've also completed 65 areas of activity, which are summarised in Appendix A. In addition to this, we've completed 3 honorary audits, 50 school financial value standard assessments, and work on 1 multi-academy trust. There are a number of changes to the audit plan during the year, and these are shown in Appendix B. Appendix C shows actions by directorate and schools. During the year, we raised 640 actions, of which 147 were classified as critical or high. The table in paragraph 10 shows a summary of the assurance ratings by directorate and schools. Audit Services issued 96% of draft reports within the 9-week target. All managers provided their initial response within the 4-week target, and 88% of final reports were issued within the 6-week target. So I think that's quite a good performance. Paragraph 16 details the follow-up work undertaken on minimal and requires improvement stroke inadequate reports, and when future follow-up work will be undertaken. Follow-up work has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Paragraph 17 details the work undertaken on high priority actions. We have undertaken 34 separate reviews and followed up 118 high actions. Paragraph 22, audit services are required to comply with the public sector internal audit standards. One of the requirements is to maintain a quality assurance and improvement programme. In paragraph 23, details the actions that are undertaken internally to maintain quality. Public sector internal audit functions are also required to have an external assessment to confirm compliance with the public sector internal audit standards every 5 years. This is our equivalent to an Ofsted. So the assessment was carried out in March 2020, and the report is attached at Appendix H. That's the full report. I'm pleased to report that the external assessor concluded that audit services meets the public sector internal audit standards. The assessment was delivered over 3 categories, and we achieved the top rating in 2 of the categories. And benchmarking included within the report also indicated that audit services compares well with both public and private sector providers. Paragraph 28 lists the key matters that need to be addressed, and in future audit and future reports to this committee, I will set out how I plan to address these matters. CIPFA produced guidance for audit committees. Appendix D sets out a position statement on the role of the audit committee. This guidance also contains self-assessments on the role and effectiveness of the audit committee, which I have updated and attached as appendices F and G. The main issues identified by the self-assessments are detailed in paragraph 29, which are to produce an annual report for Audit and Standards Committee, and to benchmark our risk management procedures, and for our corporate risk management reports to identify significant sources of assurance so gaps in assurance can be identified. SIPA also suggests that members should evaluate their skills and knowledge on a regular basis, and have developed a questionnaire for the purpose that is included at Appendix E. Although some members of this committee may have completed the questionnaire in the past, there may be benefit in updating the assessment, which will then be used to identify training needs. The Head of Audit Services is required to deliver an annual opinion. This is detailed in paragraph 34. Although I state that I can deliver reasonable assurance on the Council's framework of governance, risk management and internal control, I do raise two concerns. The first, Audit and Standards Committee have been previously informed of serious concerns with the HR and payroll system and associated procedures, and we were due to undertake a follow-up review in April 20. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, this audit has been postponed, and we've only recently started the audit. I hope to, come back to committee maybe in September with the result of that follow-up review. The other issue that I'm raising, which was picked up by the Express and Star in last night's paper, was the review undertaken by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission in May 19 on special educational needs and disabilities. In their report, they identified some serious weaknesses in procedure, and also the services has got some significant budget issues to address. So those are the two issues I'm raising in my opinion. So the recommendations in my report are the committee accepts this report on the performance of audit services during 2019-20. The committee requests members to complete the questionnaire included at Appendix E and forward it to the Head of Audit Services. The committee note and comment on the self-assessments at Appendices F and G, and the committee note and comment on the external quality assessment on audit services at Appendix H. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Graham. Before we go to recommendations or my comments, anyone else got anything they want to raise? Michael?
Yeah, Councillor Evans, yeah.
You're on mute again.
That better. Yeah.
That's better.
Right. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Graham and his team on the professional and efficient way that you've been running that department. So well done, Graham.
Thank you.
Right, thank Gay Partridge. We can't hear you, so you must be on mute. That's better.
I've just taken it off. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Evans has said. Congratulations. I mean, I do find that I have a lot of confidence in the work that is done by the auditors of the local authority, but that isn't to say that I don't have some concerns. I particularly would just like, and this is a clarification question, by the way, Chair, on page 35, there is a table, right, of audit actions where we have given a minimal rating or requires improvement as a rating, and there's just a little note on that, and the note is in the form of MB1, which I can see is actually in the table that's given to me, and MB2. I could make some assumptions about what follow-up dates have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, but I wonder if I could just have confirmation as to what those are, please. In addition, I have a supplementary question, and that relates to page 40, and it is the second item, which is raised by Audit as being of concern, and of course that is the Ofsted inspection, which has identified weaknesses for special educational needs and disability services. And I wondered how and when the Audit Committee will be kept apprised of what is happening in connection with that matter. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Graham.
Right, thank you, Chair. In terms of the table in paragraph 16, in terms of our follow-up on minimals and requires improvement, I think most of the follow-up dates have been pushed back. They've all been pushed back probably 3 months, to be honest, to reflect the pandemic. So the audit on HR and payroll was due to start in April, and we haven't been able to start that until July. And it will be the same, I think, every audit on that list, to be honest. They've all been pushed back 3 months.
Mm-hmm. You want to come back, Dan?
Just thank you for confirming that. I hadn't assumed that it was every one of them, but it's good to know that it's the case, so thank you.
And in terms of the Ofsted Care Quality Commission review back in May 19, in terms of that's been in effect monitored by, there's a Children's Improvement Board, so they're receiving reports in terms of how the council are addressing the actions raised by Ofsted and Care Quality Commission. I think it's also gone to Children's Scrutiny as well. So I think those are the forums that are making sure that the actions are being addressed.
On that item, this may be Ian that comes in. Are we doing anything about the deficit, or are we taking this into next year's accounts?
Yeah, the deficit that that Graham refers to in the report, in the second bullet point of the 13 million by the 31st of March 2021. Just to clarify, and this isn't a happy message, that is the forecast deficit, even with all action that is planned to be taken to address high need, well, to address the costs on the high needs block. This is not an I don't want to detract from the fact that this is a serious situation. However, this is not an uncommon situation for local authorities. Looking back a couple of years, looking back to the year ended 31st of March 2019, if you look at all local authorities, there are a range of different positions, with many at that stage already in deficit on their high needs block. At that point, we weren't. At the 31st of March 2020, we ourselves are already in a deficit. The precise figure is not sitting in my head, but it's around about £7 million. Again, I anticipate that when we look at the comparison with other authorities when it's available, we will also find we're not the worst and we're not the best on that. It is an issue affecting all local authorities, and this is the forecast by 13 million, even with plans in place to control costs. We are in an unusual position in that the government has passed regulations back in February, which have the impact of allowing us to actually have a negative balance on the balance sheet for dedicated schools grant, because that's where this will end up, so as to push the issue forward to future years to resolve. Ultimately, it will need a combination of additional government funding and action by individual local authorities to bring this back to a sustainable financial footing. So we're not alone in this, but it's and we're definitely not the worst, nor by any manner of means are we the best in terms of the financial impact. There'll be more about this when we bring the accounts in September.
Right, thanks, Graham. You want to come back, Guy?
Chair, Ian answered my next question at the end of what he just spoke about. So thank you. So it will come back in September as an issue. So we'll be able to have an input there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, nobody else. Just a few comments I'd like to make. The audit services completed 96%. This, I think, is good, really good going, especially as the last month or so was affected by the virus. I think it kept going very well there. Also, the reports coming back in the 90s and 100s, again, that's a great result to get. But one of the things I'm not so happy with, you got 22 questionnaires returned. Again, how many were sent out, Graham?
Right. I've anticipated this question, Chair.
Well, I gathered you bring it up every time.
You do, and I've got the details here. There was I've got the percentage. In effect, it was a return rate of 47%, Chair.
So it was about 22, about 45 cents out.
Something like that, yes.
So it's a slight improvement on other times, isn't it?
It's a little bit of an improvement. You know, I would like more back. We do chase them up, but you know, there is only so far we can go.
I believe, reading the report, the assessor has commented on this, hasn't he? And
yes.
Was it the fact that you're giving it in a written form rather than on the computer? And he suggests having it on the computer in future, you may get more returns.
Well, that's what he's saying. I'm not so convinced, to be honest, Chair. I'm happy to try that. You know, whether I need a new approach in terms of chasing, going back directly to directors and informing them that the questionnaires haven't been returned. I could try that as well. It's
worth trying, I think, because I think, you know, they should respond to these questionnaires. You do the job basically for their good as well as the council to improve their performance and in some cases make their job easier. So you should get a response from them. On mentioning the assessor, I will say that I did have a good telephone conversation with him, and his attitude to me came over that he seemed very positive about our audit services. He didn't give any real bad comments to me. Everything seemed to be positive, and having read the report, that seems to be the case. He was very pleased with what he saw.
Yes, Chair, I was pleased with the assessment. You know, I think that the benchmarking that's included in the report did show that we do compare very well with our peers, which I was pleased with. Pleased to hear.
Great. On Appendix A, the transport team, is this our internal transport team or is it external suppliers where they've got the minimal?
It is just our transport team that manages the external suppliers, to be honest, and it's already where we raise lots of issues, to be honest, Chair. At the time, the team has been managed by consultants who, in our view, weren't doing a particularly good job.
Good. Hopefully improve then. This will be chased up being a minimal, won't it?
It will, and it will be included in the report that will be coming back in terms of the chief executive, that'll come to the December meeting. So you'll have your chance there to see what progress has been made.
Lovely. Fine, thanks. And in Appendix C, again, one of my little, the unimplemented was quite high, especially with the commercial and customer services.
Yes, in terms of that, the vast majority of those 32 related to the payroll audit that we carried out April 19. I think there was 30 unimplemented from the previous review.
Because you know, when they're unimplemented, it means that they're not taking the advice of the auditors, and that's not something we should condone.
No. I'm hoping that progress will be made in terms of payroll when we report back, you know, in September time.
When we got into Appendix D, I know I've had this before, but never really got to the bottom of it. It said we have clear rights of access to other committees and functions, such as the Scrutiny and Service Committees, Corporate Risk Management Boards, and other strategic routes. We've never had any real direct contact with this. How are we supposed to? Or
yeah, I think in terms of this statement is, in effect, it's been written by SIPFA and it's applicable to all public bodies, so it's quite generic in terms of how it's been written, and I think you've got to interpret it in the context of your organisation. You know, what I'd like to do is to produce an annual report for committee, where we can take the views of stakeholders into account in the annual report. This was something we were going to do during this municipal year, during the last municipal year, but due to COVID-19, it didn't happen. But I think, you know, if we do an annual report, then we can cover some of these issues really, and I think it'll help promote the work of the committee.
Good. Right, before we actually take the recommendation, I'll just remind you all, please send Appendix E back to Graham, or will we be getting it on hard copy or through the computer, or what, Graham?
Chair, I don't mind either, to be honest. I would really appreciate receiving them though.
For some of those that are rather more initiated with the computers, you probably pay to send it on the computer and get them to return it that way. And if they don't, they can always print it off and send it back as a hard copy anyway.
That's right.
Okay, but it'd be nice for you to get it back, wouldn't it?
It would.
Right, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just on your point, Chair, relating to directors not going back to audit, could we have that the response to that coming back to our committee, so we can make note of it and see what steps we can take to address it?
Okay, yeah. No reason why we shouldn't. Right, there's no more comments. Can we take the recommendations as Graham has read out as being correct?
Chair.
We accept them.
Chair, sorry, we've got Councillor Muggle that's raised her hand.
Oh, Councillor Muggle, yeah.
Yeah. Hiya. Graham, thanks for the report. Just a quick question on Appendix B, the cancelled audits. I'm a bit concerned that the children's looked after audit was cancelled because of a change of procedure.
Yes.
In the purpose of an audit to highlight if there was any flaws.
Chair, shall I answer that?
Yes, carry on.
Yes, I think in terms of that audit, we are going to pick this area up as part of this year's plan. So we're currently planning that audit at the moment.
To me, it seems like you were aware that, well, Children's Services were aware there were some procedure errors and they wanted to avoid the audit.
I hope that wasn't the case. And
But it seems like it from the reason.
Maybe I haven't wrote it correctly, but you know, what was said to me was they were going to restructure and they're going to change their processes. So if we did an audit, we'd be looking at processes that were about to change.
But
So
regardless, sorry, Graham, to butt in. But regardless of whether they didn't change the procedure, I think if the audit was set out to be done, it should have still been carried out because it is a statutory duty for us to do this.
yes, we're certainly going to be carrying out the audit this year.
Yeah, can you note that our disappointment in that?
Yeah, I can assure you, Selena, they won't escape. Graham, keep his tabs on them.
No, we will get to them this year for sure.
Yeah, but just another clarification. If any audits are cancelled in the future, does that go to some kind of consultation or anything, or does it come back to this committee before we agree that the audit is going to be cancelled?
I certainly notify you that the audit has been postponed. Normally that comes from a director, to be honest, and if I think their justification is reasonable, I would accept that.
Okay, so it doesn't come back to the committee to accept the reason?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
I would imagine, Graham, if you disagree with them and there is quite a bit of an argument, then the committee will be brought into it.
It would, Chair, to be honest. If I'd lost confidence in the management and I thought they were just delaying the audit for whatever reason, then I would bring it back to committee and get your views on that situation.
Fine, right, thanks, Graham.
Chair, Councillor Roberts.
I did just want to come in on this point because I fully appreciate what Graham's just said and the reasons why the audit was cancelled. There's no point auditing procedures if they're going to be changed, because they then would need auditing again. So I fully appreciate the reason why the audit was postponed, and I think it's probably a far more efficient way of doing what you have chosen to do, rather than auditing something and then wanting to audit it again in a year or in a year. So I fully appreciate why you've done it, and I do think, as behalf, from an efficiency point of view, that is what was best to needed to be done. So I just wanted to clarify my position on that.
Right, thanks. Shanila, do you want to come back again because your hand's up?
Yeah, please. What councillor, forgot his name, sorry, just said, yeah, I agree with the efficiency, but once a change gets made in a procedure, you still have to go in and monitor it again. So you're still going to perform an audit within a year to make sure those procedures are effective.
Right, fine. So, Guy Partridge, Guy?
Thank you, Chair. What I'm going to say is that I think Shanila makes a really, really good point. Over the last 12 months, we have seen lots of failures in the marketplace where audit has failed. I'm not suggesting for one instance that this is happening here. However, I do think, we should be mindful of the fact that directors are taking the decision, and in effect, they are sort of like advising within a hierarchical structure of people to do their bidding, for want of a better way of putting it. So I think we need to give some attention really to what happens in terms of council audit and make sure that there is a mechanism in place that demonstrates that appropriate consideration has been given by either a group of people who are equal and up to the decisions of the various directors, or indeed the chief executive. So I do think that's a really good point, and it's very timely, it's well made, and it's something that I would like to see reflected in the minutes at a very bare minimum. Thank you, Chair.
Right, fine. Do you want to come back again, Joe? Your hand's up.
Just left it up, unfortunately, so I'll take it down. Sorry, Anne.
Okay, fine. Any other comment on that, Graham?
Chair, I think it's something I'll consider, to be honest, in terms of before making the decision to postpone an audit, whether to bring it back to committee and seek your views first. Sometimes it's practicalities as well, given that the committee only meets 5 times a year and it might delay the decision. But I will give that some thought.
Yeah, I mean, time scale is a big thing, isn't it? They could want to cancel it now, meeting's not for another 2-3 months. So if the committee were of the mind that the committee should, it might be to consult with the chair of committee, or not that I'm particularly bothered about that, but that would sort of solve the time element. Ian, you want to comment?
Yeah, unfortunately, you've already just said what I was going to suggest. I think we could give some additional rigor to this. I think it would be impractical to wait until the next meeting of the committee to have a discussion on every potential cancellation. But there were only 5 cancellations in last year. If there had been some informal process with the chair, even with the committee more widely, that would not have been excessive. So that would have allowed the members of the committee, at least informally, to express concerns if they were unhappy with a particular cancellation.
Fine, thanks, Ian.
We could put something like that in place for future years.
Yeah, if the committee's of a mind, that can be done.
Sounds.
You want to come in? Are you on mute, Sean?
Sorry, Chair, you took 2 people just spoke at the same time and I didn't realise. Just to say that I completely agree with Councillor Muggle's concerns. And in terms of timescales, haven't we earlier in this meeting re-elected a subcommittee? And surely that subcommittee should have the authority to act on behalf of the full committee if an issue like this crops up in the future.
That committee was only the standards committee that deals with disciplinary matters. And I don't think this could come under that committee.
That's fine, Chair. I stand corrected on that then.
Fine, no problem. Michael? You're on mute again.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Chair, we're going through unpredictable times at the moment. And I think basically the job the audit committee have done so far, I think the responsibility should stop with the audit committee to decide which is right at that time. Because we have meetings, but the prolonged periods of our meetings could actually jeopardize the movement instead of actually improve it.
Right, thank you. No, your hand's still up, Ian and Sean. Either want to come in? No, fine. No one else? Right, we'll take it that the recommendations as put in the book and as Graham read out, we take those as being passed and okay. And as we've got no dissensions, we'll now move on. Go on to item 9, which is the internal audit plan. You again, Graham.
Right. Thank you, Chair. So this report details the proposed internal audit plan for the period 1st of July 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. Internal audit work was postponed for the first 3 months of the financial year, and staff have been seconded to support other service areas. So we've been helping with business grants, we've been helping with calls to people who are shielding. We've generally been helping the authority cope with the pandemic. Unfortunately, some of this work is going to take some audit staff into July, to be honest. so that there may be implications for the completion of the plan, which I will bring to the committee's attention in future reports. So there's still work to do on business grants, and we're also assisting with a HR investigation, which is ongoing. So in terms of the audit plan, so this is drawn up in order to enable me to deliver an internal audit opinion on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the council's framework of governance, risk management and internal control. A very detailed process is followed to produce the audit plan, which is set out in paragraph 7. Firstly, we ensure that the list of auditable areas is complete, which are then scored, and these scores adjusted for any assurance received. The resulting scores are then prioritised as high, medium and low, reflecting those areas of highest risk that have the most pressing need for assurance. Meetings were held with the Chief Executive and Directors to discuss their risks and emerging risks and proposals for inclusion in the audit plan. I was due to attend Strategic Executive Board to discuss the audit plan, but the meeting was cancelled due to COVID-19. The Director of Finance and Legal has agreed the draft plan with the Chief Executive. The proposed audit plan for 2021 is included in Appendix A. Appendix B shows a comparison of the audit plan against the corporate risks. Paragraph 16 shows a breakdown of the audit plan by directorate, schools and other work. As you can see, approximately 18% of the plan is allocated to fraud work and 12% to income generation work. The recommendation of the report is that members know the contents of the report and approve the internal audit plan for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Any comments anybody wants to make? Yes, Kay.
Thank you, Chair. Looking for further information in connection with an item that appears on page 93. It's under other audit services activity and it relates to fraud. What I'm reading here is that 180 days, I think, of audit time is proposed to be spent on investigating or auditing fraud activity, and I'm looking for further and additional information. I did say at the very beginning of the meeting that I had tried to find last year's plan, and as you know, I've only just completed 12 months, so I wasn't at all sure whether this was sort of like something new, whether this is what we could ordinarily expect, but it does seem like a significant amount of time to be spending on items relating to fraud. I've also made the assumption that the matters relating to fraud are to do with the council's own systems, but again, looking for clarification on that, please. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Graham.
Right, thank you, Chair. Normally, an annual fraud report gets presented to committee in April. Unfortunately, that meeting was cancelled. The annual fraud report is now going to be presented to the August meeting. And within the annual fraud report, it really sets out all the work that we've done on fraud during the year. Our fraud work is split into 4 strands: prevent, detect, investigate and resolve. And we've got one dedicated corporate fraud manager who works solely on fraud work, and he's supported by a systems person who does a lot of data analysis, that type of thing. Most of the time of our corporate fraud manager is spent investigating frauds that have been brought to our attention. And these can be brought to our attention in many ways. We maintain a fraud hotline for the authority, so that's one way the referrals get to us. Managers ring us up and pass on concerns, which we investigate. Sometimes through audit work, issues are identified, which we then follow through. there is, although it seems a lot of days, it isn't that much time really. It's about one and a bit people, 1.5 people at most. So it's not that much, to be fair.
You want to come back, Guy?
Chair, I literally was, genuinely asking for additional information. I think that fraud around and about council systems and government systems, I think from what you are saying, is a real risk for everyone in our society, and I'm just trying to better understand. So thank you very much for the responses made.
This isn't just fraud on systems and everything, it's financial fraud for the council.
Chair, I understand that from the comments that was made by Graham Harrison when he was talking about the public hotline, I think, on fraud. But, I still am very much at the learning part of my role in this committee.
I hope we're teaching you well. Did you want to speak, Nian, or no?
No, it was only I was going to come in, but Graham answered the question. I was only going to make the point, when you see the detail of the report on fraud, you'll wonder how it's all done in 180 days. But that will be in the August meeting. Yeah, you'll pick up more then, Guy. Be patient and wait till next month.
Well,
yes, Graham, you wanted to come in.
All I was going to say, Chair, is just to reiterate what Ian's just said, really. We bring a very detailed fraud report to committee. It is a very comprehensive report, and you'll see exactly what we've done and what our corporate fraud manager, Martin Granger, has done during the year.
Thank you.
Oh, you took your hand down, fine. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, Graham. I was just a bit confused when I read in Appendix A. We got to adult social care, and finally it says children.
Right. In terms of that, at the moment, the Children with Disabilities team comes under the Dudley Disability Service, which comes under the Director of Adult Social Care.
Just a bit confusing when you.
Although, in terms of statutory responsibility, that still rests with the Director of Children's Services.
Yeah, I'll take it. The other thing on page 95, the R234 emergency planning, says the owner's Deborah Harkins. Hasn't she now left the council?
She has. I think that this plan was produced probably before Deborah left the council, to be honest.
That emergency planning one's been on there, for some time, but just pointing out it needs the new one putting on.
Yes.
Fine. I've got nothing else. No one else is indicating, so do we take it that the recommendation is all right, that we've noted and we've commented on the contents of the report? There's no dissension, so I take it that we have accepted the report. Well, that concludes this meeting. Thank you all for your patience and tolerance. I think it's gone down fairly well. We haven't had many hitches. And I look forward to seeing you all again, same place, on the 12th of August to conclude the July meeting. Thank you very much. Yes,
Thank you,
Lisa.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lisa, you
Thanks,
want to
Chair.
say something?
Thank you, Chair.
It was just to confirm, and you won't be surprised by this, but there were no questions from members to the chair with 2 clear days notice. I don't think we've ever had any.
Yeah, well, as I hadn't seen them, I took it there as read. So, anyway, thank you all very much, and see you on the 12th.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you.
bye.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye all.
Bye now.
Bye.
Lisa, could you just stop the recording, please?